300,000 people killed, a whole city burned, China's pride insulted. The Nanjing Massacre was a horrific event where Japanese soldiers slaughtered innocent, defenseless Chinese civilians. This is Tony, Mia, Justin, and Tori, introducing to you our design of an annex to the Nanjing Massacre Memorial. Some problems we have found that are present in the current memorial are the blatant amounts of propaganda and exaggeration used within, the lack of proper and efficient spacing, and the poor effort to reduce energy leakage.
We have been tasked to design a new museum that will address these problems because we believe that there is a lack of understanding between the Japanese and Chinese. Due to the way the current memorial was created, many Chinese citizens have an ongoing hate toward the Japanese as a whole. Our group wishes to end this hatred as a whole by providing a look at the Japanese perspective. We will now address our design from 4 different perspectives: art, history, science, and English.
For the science part of our design, we looked at how energy efficient our building is. Basically, there are 3 ways in which energy is transferred: conduction, convection, and radiation. Conduction happens when particles vibrate, rotate, and translate, resulting in collisions between particles. These collisions bring the particles up to a higher energy state. This process is repeated, and is how energy is transferred through conduction. There is less conduction in the other methods of energy transfer. The only vulnerable part of the museum is the ground. The floor will have thick carpeting with aerogel beneath it. Convection occurs when particles in a higher energy state expand and particles in a lower energy state sink. Because of this, the hotter air will be above the guests and the colder air will be at their level. Our design prevents thermal energy loss through convection by having double-paned low-E glass. Low-E glass is a very good insulator, reflecting harmful rays of sunlight, yet letting visible light through. This reduces the change in temperature inside the building, keeping convection to a minimum.
The last way of energy transfer is radiation. After the electron jumps to a higher energy level and comes back down to their ground state, it releases a photon. The photon then travels through the electromagnetic field and energizes the electron that absorbs the photon. In order to prevent this from happening, we made our design's color white. The reason for this choice of color is because brighter colors reflect electromagnetic radiation instead of absorbing it, thus lowering the amount of energy leakage and transference. Our design for the annex attempts to reduce energy loss through radiation by having double-layered concrete walls with silica aerogel in between. Silica aerogel is one of the best insulation materials available. Although concrete is a poor insulator, the 2 slabs of it are not touching due to the insulating aerogel. Lastly, in order to fulfill the COP21 standards initiated in Paris, our design will only be open from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. so that the lights in the museum will not be on 24/7. Also, because of the low-E glass windows and the aerogel-fitted walls, our building also has minimal energy leaks, which also helps conserve energy.
What was in our mind when we designed the building was to save as much energy as possible. So the museum will only be open from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. These hours are the times that the natural lighting can be used to light the museum. On the ceiling, there are mirrors hanging to reflect the light throughout the museum. This not only saves energy, but also solves the problem that sunlight can only reach some part of the museum. If there is a day that organic lighting is not enough, there are wall lamps over the pictures and display cases. They will be closed after the museum is closed. The overall design motif for this project is dominoes. We believe that the reason of the tension between Japan and China right now is the Sino-Japanese War and World War II. The Nanjing Massacre marked the start of the war and is the first battle that made the Chinese hate the Japanese. This marked the first domino. As you can see here, the domino is most tilted to symbolize the unstableness of the situation during the Nanjing Massacre, when the Chinese had no forgiveness towards Japanese. The second building was less tilted to symbolize the situation of right now, that Chinese have forgive the Japanese to some extent, but not fully forgave yet. And the third building is the least tilted, to symbolize that in the near future, the Chinese can fully forgive the Japanese. To emphasize our point on forgiveness, we have added stripes onto the building. The level of forgiveness is represented by the number of the stripes colored on the wall. From the front wall of the first building, there are no stripes colored, and the number of colored stripes gradually increase until the last wall, where all the stripes are colored, symbolizing that the two country and group can finally work together and understand. Our overall design motif is dominoes, so we added a bit of a slant to all of the pictures on the wall. Also, the exhibition casings are positioned to be a place like dominoes. The bathrooms too are made to be like dominoes, with a tilt, which not only adds to the overall design motif, and is also visually more engaging than plain rectangular cubes. The trees on the outside not only contribute to the fact that it is more pleasing as a sight, it also helps to keep the COP21 standards because it keeps the conduction by wind away. Lastly, on the exit of the museum, we have a shrine door from a Japanese culture. We want this to symbolize that when audiences walk out of the museum, they can walk out with an understanding of the Japanese.
It only presents information on the Chinese side of the story, so it is extremely biased and it purposely encourages propaganda and bias. However, what we are trying to portray is that the Japanese had a reason to invade the Chinese and that what they did is actually justified. The Japanese had very little natural resources, so they could not support their economy. Their country's landmass was extremely small compared to China or the United States, so they did not have enough land to farm in order to support the massive population. So in these desperate times, the Japanese decided to invade China because they had to for their own survival. During the Nanjing Massacre, the Japanese performed horrendous acts on the surrendered Chinese, even though the Japanese soldiers believed in a code of honor, known as the Bushido Code. They did not obey the code during the rape of Nanjing. The Bushido Code highlights the following virtues: justice, mercy, courage, politeness, honor, loyalty, and self-control. Despite this, the Japanese seldom showed mercy on foreign soil. We believe that the Japanese did not display these virtues to the Chinese due to the fact that the Japanese simply did not see the Chinese as equals or even people. The Japanese had their troops dehumanize the Chinese people as if the Bushido Code will not apply to them. The current memorial does not show the Japanese perspective of the war, only showing their actions. The truth was that the Japanese soldiers were often forced to have a negative impression of the Chinese. There were many cases of abuse when a Japanese child would not admit to the inferiority of the Chinese. We believe that if light was shed on these events, it could change the way the Chinese regarded the entire Japanese race. The first article in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights states that all humans are born equal. But during the Nanjing Massacre, not only were the Chinese not seen as equals, but the Japanese soldiers as well. We hope to show visitors that the Japanese were also treated inhumanly, and that many soldiers had not willingly committed to the atrocious acts. For these reasons, we believe that the current memorial can be significantly improved. Our new design addresses the problems present at this time. We will be providing factual information instead of propaganda, giving more people room and constructing the exterior to reduce the loss of thermal energy. We hope that by addressing the Japanese perspective, we can allow the hate between the two countries to dissipate.